This time, I just did a story I wanted to do for a while now. I actually don't have this one in my collection. So let's go on this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. Today's story is about a guy named Richard Hellman. He was born in Germany in 1876. It's so cool, some of the things that you can find on Ancestry.com. This one is a manifest of a ship named Campania that pulls into Ellis Island, New York on September 6, 1902. And on that boat is a 27-year-old Richard Hellman, a laborer. This manifest says that he was actually here 3 years ago and he visited a friend named Andrew Rotman. Well, he soon married a girl named Margaret. Her parents owned a deli, so he started working there. See, here in this 1910 census, it shows Richard, Margaret, and their baby daughter, Margaret. It says Richard is a keeper at a delicatessen store. A few years later, they opened their own deli. Now, this 1944 newspaper tells the story of how Hellman began his mayonnaise business. First, can I just say that this Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is a really good book, and I encourage everyone to read it at least once. It's just a good book on how to deal with people, and it's still very relevant today. Anyways, it says in 1912, a delicatessen dealer in New York wanted to earn more money than his store was bringing in. He thought about the mayonnaise his wife made from a recipe that she was working on. She made it for themselves, but then he started selling it over the counter. Many people expressed great satisfaction in it, so Hellman and his wife made up a larger order, and he took it to customers who normally trade with him. He told them it was something unusually fine, and they agreed it was really fine. Hellman and his wife continued selling it for some months, but it wasn't taking off like they wanted it to. Then, one day, while on a delivery, standing at the door of a customer's house, he saw a lady trying to get a rival's mayonnaise out of a small-necked bottle. And the way I'm picturing it is it's probably like a ketchup bottle. And she was struggling to get that last bit out. So his light bulb went off, and all of his competitors were using these regular condiment bottles. So he thought, what if he used wide neck jars? It says that was all there was to that idea, but it was plenty. He worked fast to make sure to get ahead of his competitors. So he hired 2 guys to come in and help take and deliver orders. It says orders started pouring in so fast he had to hire a truck for the first time to speed up deliveries. Between his wide neck jars idea and his speedy deliveries, he started booming, and before long he had a second truck. He would later say that those 2 ideas made him a millionaire, the wide mouth jar and the quick delivery. The fact that it was a good mayonnaise recipe was just the gravy on top. His deli was at 490 Columbus Avenue in Manhattan. Notice the people up there in the windows? Look how many trucks he has here. I'm sure Hellman is standing here somewhere, but I don't know which one is him. He's got a mustache, so maybe it's this guy. And this is what it looks like today. And what's all that crap in front of it? Maybe it's just me, but I never understood the hype around New York City. I went there once, and I was afraid if I touched anything I was going to catch some disease. It smelled gross, and there's trash everywhere. Anyway, let's move on. In 1915, we see here Richard Hellman just bought 2 lots in Long Island City from a Mr. Spector for $3,000. This is going to be the location of his new factory, and this is where Manhattan is compared to Long Island City. Around this time, he filled out his World War I registration card, where he listed himself as executive of manufacturer of fruit products, which I thought was really interesting. As far as I've read so far, he wasn't interested in fruits. His company is called Richard Hellman Incorporated, and here's the address listed as 501 Steinway Avenue. Well, there's not a Steinway Avenue anymore, but there is a Steinway Street, but there's no 501. So I wasn't even able to narrow it down to a possible building this time. I have two photos in the front of his store, and I'm not sure which order they go in, but it looks like Richard is right there in the front. And these look like two different storefronts. This one has more people, so I assume this one is dated later than the other photo. And then in 1919, the Hellmans buy a historic home in Flushing. The Wickham homestead has been owned and occupied for the last 70 years by Henry Wickham. It says it has 17 rooms and 7 fireplaces. It was built in 1840. It's on 3 acres, and it's known for its strawberry beds, which are among the finest on Long Island. But when I went looking for it, this is the place that Google takes me. But this isn't the same house, so it must not be standing anymore. It was built in 1840, so I guess that was a long shot. Anyway, the following year, we see the family moved into their new home with a brand new 3-month-old baby boy, Robert. This census was taken in January 1920, and by March, Margaret died after a lingering disease. She was only 42. He then remarried a girl named Nina. Now, she was 21 and he was 45 when they got married. By this 1925 census, they had been married around 3 years now, and they already have a 2-year-old son named Raymond. Here's a 1921 passport photo of Richard Hellman. 1925 says Richard Hellman declared an initial quarterly dividend of 62.5 cents a share on its participating preferred stock. 1925, Richard is listed as being on the board of the American Trust Company of the Long Island office. In spring of 1926, there's a blue ribbon banquet. It's being hosted at Hotel Commodore, and 500 delegates from Maine to Louisiana have arrived by bus yesterday. After an address of welcome by Richard Hellman, they toured the Long Island plant. And in the evening, the delegates attended a theater party. Everyone leaves tomorrow. In 1927, Richard Hellman, president of the Richard Hellman Incorporated, producers of the Hellman's Blue Ribbon Mayonnaise, yesterday addresses a sales convention in Hotel Statler. Skipping down, it says Mr. Hellman, in the brief period of 12 years, built up one of the largest organizations of its kind. It says Hellman's mayonnaise is sold throughout the country, and 8 factories in so many cities are producing it. That was written in May, and then in August that same year, we see that Postum Company has been given a contract with controlling interest in Richard Hellman Incorporated. You know Postum as Post Cereals. Marjorie Merriweather Post buys the company for over $1 million. Richard Hellman decides he wants to retire. He's 50. He continues to stay on the board for some time after this, though. 1929, he gets the yacht fueled up, about ready to take it out, when it explodes. It blows 2 men off the boat, injuring them both. It sank 5 minutes later. The Tranquil was a 68-foot, $50,000 yacht. It had just been loaded with 20 gallons of gasoline. There must have been a leak somewhere because it just instantly exploded. One guy was thrown 20 feet into the water, critically injured. This photo says that the yacht was $70,000. They also call Richard Hellman the Mayonnaise King. In 1929, there's plans to erect a movie theater that could seat 4,000 people. The only reason Richard is mentioned is because he owns the land that this guy wants to build on. 1929 is when I finally start to see advertisements for the mayonnaise. I guess Hellman never needed to advertise. 1930, here's his household. It looks like we have a new baby girl, Carol Nina, who's 4 months old. It shows occupation, none. We see in 1930 they've upgraded to Dodge trucks now. Postum has already been bought up by General Food Sales Company. In 1933, some exposition happened in Rochester. Apparently, this is the largest Hellman's mayonnaise display ever built in Rochester. In 1933, Richard's oldest daughter, Margaret, died. She succumbed to a month-long illness. She was only 27, married, with 2 babies. A couple years later, Richard's son Raymond, who was the baby when his mom Margaret died, is now 14. He's interested in chemistry, so his dad got him a chemistry set. Him and a school buddy were messing around in the basement when they were both splattered with burning acid. At this time, they were worried that he might be blind. They say it will be several days before they would know if he will see again. Now, I see a register for World War II when he's 21, so I doubt he would be able to do this if he was blind, so I'm going to say he turned out okay. He lives to be 68. Richard Hellman's wife Nina was a semi-professional golfer, and she shows up in the paper several times over the years. This 1937 gives us a glimpse of her. She's on the left looking over her scorecard. I see her from the early 30s till around 1950, still taking titles. In 1939, you could get a quart of mayo for 39 cents. In 1948, here's a picture of the jar, and it says to use in sauces and salads, including using it for fruit. Apparently, on one side of the Rocky Mountains, they still sell the mayonnaise under the name Best Foods Mayonnaise, while east of the Rockies, they still call it Hellman's. Both of them account for 45% of all mayo bottled in the US. The company is now owned by Unilever. Here's a 1958 ad in Life magazine. This recipe is for a cranberry souffle salad topped with Hellman's. If you could see my face right now. Anyway, Richard Hellman died in February 1971, a few months shy of his 95th birthday. His wife Nina continued golfing until she died in 1989 when she was 88. I found a few examples on eBay. This one's pretty cool. It's got a crackly design. There's an Owens mark here, which dates it to around 1939. This would be a good 12 years after Hellman retired from the company. It's got a pretty worn lid. And here's another one, but I'm not sure of the date of this one. And that's going to do it for this one. We'll see you on the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.